Okay, welcome back. This is part 2 of this second series, and this is still part of the review before we start chapter 8. So we started with number 1, and we went through and some vocabulary words. Here are the rest of the vocabulary words that we're going to find in our story. So, to review, tumble down, falling apart. Courtiers, advisors to the king. Sack, a bag usually made out of cloth. Snatched, grabbed quickly. Next, omelet. Beaten eggs. Beaten eggs cooked but not scrambled. I also forgot the next one that was in line that comes before that is the word that's pronounced kasha. So kasha is a kind of barley mixed with milk or barley mixed with cream and maybe a little sugar and a little cinnamon, and it's served hot. And it's usually found in Western European countries, Russia, and that part of the world. So another name for it in England would have been porridge. So it was a breakfast cereal made out of oats. Next one, laden. This is a verb, laden. It was someone who's carrying a very heavy weight on their back. We say that they were laden down. They were pushed down by all the weight that they're carrying on their back. The next one, huffed and puffed. So huff and puff means that you're breathing heavily. So if you go out for a run and start running and you've run for a long time, at the end it's really hard to catch your breath. We say that you are huffing and puffing. Okay, so those are the vocabulary words that we're going to find in the story. The story that I've decided to read is called The King Who Tried to Fry an Egg on His Head. And I don't know, I just seem to have been picking fairy tales. The last story that we read was a fairy tale, and it was an untrue story. Also, looking at that, I realized that this is going to be a little distracting. I'm going to turn it around. So that will make it easier for you to see the pictures and not be quite so distracted. This is the cover of the book. The title is The King Who Tried to Fry an Egg on His Head by Miriam Ginsburg. A long time ago and far away, there lived a king. This king was very poor, and he was not very clever. He lived with his queen and 3 beautiful daughters in a tumble-down palace. They had no servants and no courtiers, no soldiers and no treasury. And often, when the peasants on their land forgot to bring them some bread or meat or carrots, they had to go without supper. So here's a picture of the king and his family. Empty bowls. One day the queen said to the king, "Go take a look in the barn. Perhaps there is still a little grain in the sack in the corner." The king went to the barn. He found the sack. In wonder of wonders, there was still a little grain. He snatched up the sack and brought it to the queen. But when she looked, the sack was empty. The mice had eaten a hole in it, and all the grain had spilled out on the ground in the yard. Well, that was not a clever king, was it? "My unhappy wife," cried the king, "and my unlucky daughters who must starve in my palace. No princes come to woo you because we are so poor." They all said sat down and put their arms around each other and wept. Weep, wept, weep, wept, wept. Getting my little English grammar lesson in there. Then the king went out into the yard and said, "If the sun warms me and the moon gives me light, and if the raven helps me gather the grain I have spilled, I will let them marry my daughters." Well, that was kind of clever, kind of witty of him to say. The sun warmed him, the moon gave him light, and the raven helped him gather the grain he had spilled. The king and his family had kasha for supper. So here's a picture of the porridge or the kasha. Everybody, what is it? That's right, kasha. The next morning, the eldest princess went out on the porch just as the sun was rising. "What a lovely girl!" cried the sun. He swept her up and took her to his golden house in the sky and made her his wife. In the evening, just as the moon appeared, the second princess came out on the porch. "What a lovely girl!" cried the moon. He swept her up and took her to his silver house in the sky and made her his wife. At night, when everything was dark, the youngest princess came out on the porch. The great black raven, king of all the ravens, flew by and cried, "Oh, what a lovely girl!" He swept her up and took her to his green house in the woods and made her his wife. So a raven is a kind of bird, and it's black and very, very large. After a while, the king decided to visit his daughters and see how they lived. He went first to his eldest daughter in the sun's golden house. The princess and her husband welcomed him. In the morning, the sun said, "Now I will make your breakfast." He sat down and broke an egg and poured it on his head. In a minute, he served the king the tastiest omelet he had ever eaten. After breakfast, the king went back home to his queen, laden with gold and presents, and happy because his daughter lived so well. So here we have the vocabulary word omelet and laden with gold and presents. So that means they were so heavy and he had so much that they were he had to bend over and stoop over. So that means he was laden with presents. He had lots of them. "Come here, wife," he said when he got home. "Look at these lovely presents. We won't be poor from now on. And look at what I've learned from our clever son-in-law." He told her to buy some eggs. "Now watch me," he said. "I will make you the tastiest omelet you have ever eaten." He sat down and broke an egg and poured it on his head. It trickled down his face. Oh, we didn't use trickle as a vocabulary word. So trickle means slowly run down the cheek, kind of like a tear trickles down your face. It trickled down his face and neck and got into his collar. But wait, he said to his wife, "just wait and see." "I married a fool," she said, and she went to the stove and made herself the tastiest omelet she had ever eaten. Well, that was not very clever of him, was it? A week later, the king went to visit his second daughter in the moon's silver house. The princess and her husband welcomed him, and the moon said, "My dear father-in-law, what would you like for supper?" "I am not hungry," said the king. "Then how would you like a nice bath after your long journey?" The moon took him to the bathhouse and opened the door for him. "But it is dark," the king said. "I'll trip and fall." "Don't worry," said the moon. He stuck his finger into a crack in the wall, and the bathhouse was lit up by a dozen candles. The next day the king went back home to his queen, laden with silver and presents, and happy his daughter lived so well. So did he have lots of presents or just a few? That's right, he had lots of presents because laden means you have lots to carry. Come here, wife, he said when he got home. Look at these lovely presents, and look at what I've learned from our clever son-in-law. By now it was evening, and he told his wife to heat some water. Then he took her to the bathhouse and said, now you will have a nice warm bath. Whoever takes a bath at night? It's dark in the bathhouse. I'll trip and fall. Oh, don't worry, said the king, and stuck his finger into a crack in the wall. The bathhouse remained as dark as it always had been at night. But wait, he said to the queen, just wait and see. I married a fool, she said, and went back to the palace for her supper. A week later, the king went to visit his youngest daughter in the raven's greenhouse. The princess and her husband welcomed him. They talked and they laughed and made merry. When bedtime came, the raven flew up on a branch and invited the king to join him. The old man huffed and puffed, but with his daughter's help he managed to climb up and settle next to the raven. The raven took him under his wing, and they slept safe and sound all night. The next day the king set out for home, laden with presents, and happy because all his daughters lived so well. Come here, wife, he said when he got home. Look at these lovely presents, and later I will show you what I've learned from our clever son-in-law. At bedtime, he led his wife out of the palace and into the garden. He chose a great old tree and said to the queen, now watch me and do the same. He huffed and he puffed, and in the end he managed to climb up and settle on a branch. Come up now after me, he cried. I'm married to an old fool, said the queen, and went back into the palace to her nice, soft, warm bed. But the king said, I must practice what I've learned from my clever son-in-law. Not very clever. He sat on the branch and he got sleepier and sleepier. At last he dozed off. By the way, what does doze mean? It means a light sleep. It doesn't mean like you've gone to bed at night. You just kind of start to begin to sleep. You doze off. And before he knew it, he came tumbling down all the way to the hard, cold ground. Oh, he moaned, and never again, he groaned. He limped off to the palace and quietly got into his wife's nice, soft, warm bed. Never again. And they lived peacefully and by their own wits forever after. So, instead of living by the cleverness of the sun, or the cleverness of the moon, or the cleverness of the raven, they decided to live by their own cleverness, which fit them very, very well. So now I want to include a few more vocabulary words. Oh dear. Okay, so another one that I did not put down was doze. Doze. That means just the beginning of going to sleep. It doesn't mean that you're actually in a deep sleep. You're just dozing off to sleep. You're just getting ready to sleep. Right? So you're getting into a light sleep. Vocabulary word that I failed to write down was So he settled onto a branch. So that means that you kind of make yourself, you sit down, you make yourself really comfortable, and then you're okay. I'm finally settled. I'm finally okay. So another moan and groan. MOANGROAN. So they are actually sounds that you make when you don't feel comfortable. When you feel uncomfortable, you go, oh, oh. So that's moaning and groaning, not feeling comfortable. And there was one more that I wanted to put down, and that was limped. So what does limp mean? Actually, there are several different meanings for limp. One is when you've injured your leg and you can't walk normally, as if you were walking just straight across the room like that, or back again. You're kind of walking unevenly. So that would be someone who has a limp. Maybe their leg is shorter than the other, or maybe you've injured it in some way so it's not as strong. So when you're walking, you're not walking in a smooth line. You're walking like this, like this, like this, like this. So you're kind of limping along. Another way that we use limp is in kind of like my hand went limp. It fell down. The paper was limp. The cloth was limp. The sponge was limp. It wasn't straight and strong. It became weak. And so that's another way to use the word limp. So there we have the little book that I decided to read, which has been a long time since we've read anything like that. And one last review of the vocabulary words. Limp would be an uneven walk or something that's not straight and strong. The next, tumble down, means it's falling apart. The next one, courtiers, people who are advisors to the king. The next, a sack, which is really a bag that's usually made out of cloth. The next one, snatched, grab quickly. So little children, when they're at a party, sometimes, or they're at in a store, they'll snatch or grab something very quickly before somebody else gets it. And you snatch something because it might run away, or you might not get what you want right at the moment. The next, kasha. So kasha is a kind of food. It's a porridge. It's usually oatmeal mixed with milk, and you drink it when it's kind of warm. The next, omelet. Omelet are beaten eggs that you cook in a frying pan, and you don't scramble them or stir them. You just leave them the way they are, and that's a puffy omelet. Next, laden. That means someone is carrying something on their back or on their shoulders that's really, really heavy. The next, huffed and puffed. That means to breathe very heavily. The next, doze. It means you're falling asleep, but you're not in a deep sleep yet. You're just kind of lightly sleeping and just getting into a deep sleep. The next, settle. Okay, settle down. Now everything's okay. I've arranged everything, and now I can become calm because I'm settled. And the last one, moan and groan. Well, if I'm moaning and groaning, I am not settled because that means I'm not happy with something or somebody. So I'm moaning and groaning. Okay, that's the end of this video, and I will see you for the next one.